Hi, I'm Callista. A few weeks ago, I lost my dad after he fought a long, difficult battle with his health. It's been really hard for me to accept that he's gone. Sometimes I catch myself wishing he could have met his grandchildren someday. That thought always leaves me with a heavy sigh because it's something that will never happen now. 6 years ago, when I was 33, I got married. It was one of the happiest days of my life, and on that special day, my dad and I made a promise to each other. We agreed that if I ever had a baby, I would tell him first. That was our little pact, something close to my heart. But sadly, I never got the chance to fulfill that promise, and it's one of my biggest regrets when I think about my dad. My dad's health took a turn for the worse about a year ago when he was diagnosed with his illness. From that moment on, I did everything I could to be there for him. I visited my childhood home more often than ever, spent hours sitting by his hospital bed with my mom, and made it a point to call or video chat with him as often as I could. Still, I sometimes wonder if I could have done more. I've caught myself whispering, was it enough? Did I do enough for him? My mom, who has always been my biggest support, would reassure me every time. Callista, you did everything you could. Your dad knew that, and he was proud of you, she would say, trying to ease my guilt. One day, as we sat together in the living room, my sister Eulalia walked in, followed by a man who looked to be in his late 38s. I assumed he was a lawyer. This is Jack, the attorney, Eulalia said, introducing him. My mom quickly offered him a seat, and we all sat down. Eulalia, unable to hold back, immediately blurted out, "The lawyer said Dad left us a significant inheritance." I couldn't help but respond to her bluntness. "Eulalia, you know it's not all yours," I said. My words were sharp, and the mood in the room shifted instantly. Eulalia and I have always had a rocky relationship, and things only got worse during our dad's illness. She had refused to visit him, even though I tried so many times to get her to come and spend some time with him. Her attitude created a wall between us, and it only grew taller during those hard days. Looking back, I realized my words to her were a bit harsh, driven by my frustration and love for our dad. But Eulalia's reaction didn't help matters. "You're an adult. There's no need to be so stubborn," I told her. She snapped back, "I'm not being stubborn. Living in the city and traveling all the way to the countryside isn't as simple as you think. It's just a 3-hour drive," I argued. "Those 3 hours aren't just about time, Callista," she said angrily. "It costs money too. And money is important to me. I'm busy, so stop nagging me about it." That was the end of that conversation. I couldn't understand why she wouldn't make the effort to visit, even just once. It wasn't about the distance for me, it was about showing Dad that he mattered. This disagreement drove an even bigger wedge between us, and by the time Dad passed away, she still hadn't visited him. The tension in the room grew until the lawyer gently stepped in, suggesting we all take a moment to calm down. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry." My apology seemed to ease the atmosphere a little. The lawyer then began to explain. "As I mentioned over the phone, I'm here to discuss your father's will." My mom, looking puzzled, asked, "When was this arranged?" The lawyer replied, "It was about a few weeks before he passed. Your husband contacted me and asked me to come to the hospital." "Did you draft the will there at the hospital?" my mom asked, clearly surprised. "Yes," the lawyer explained. "Your husband wanted to make sure everything was in order. The will was prepared in the presence of his primary doctor, and it was arranged that the doctor would notify me after his passing. That's why I contacted you now." The lawyer then pulled out a white envelope and placed it on the table. My heart sank when I saw the handwriting on it. "That's definitely Dad's handwriting," I whispered softly, holding back tears. Eulalia, looking impatient, crossed her arms and said, "Can we just get on with it? I don't have all day." The lawyer smiled slightly and opened the envelope. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper that listed what Dad had left behind. The inheritance included the house, some land, savings, and something surprising, a storage shed. Eulalia immediately perked up and, with a frustrated tone, asked the lawyer, "Wait, what about the farm?" The lawyer looked surprised. "The farm?" "Yes, the farm," Eulalia said. "Dad used to work on it as a hobby." I explained that our father had run a successful business in a nearby town for many years. But when he turned 50, he decided to slow down. He wanted to focus on his hobbies, including working on a small farm near our home. Dad even considered shutting down his company to free up more time for himself. This new mention of the farm added an unexpected twist to the conversation about his legacy. During my high school years, I remember Dad often talking about the importance of slowing down and enjoying life. My sister Eulalia, who was in college at the time, didn't agree with his laid-back attitude. She believed that hard work and ambition were the keys to success and didn't see the value in Dad's decision. However, both my mom and I were more worried about Dad's health, so we supported him wholeheartedly. "Don't worry about the money, Eulalia," Dad had told her back then. "We've saved enough to take care of everything." Eulalia eventually gave a hesitant nod, though she didn't seem fully convinced. Shortly after that conversation, Dad began winding down his business operations. True to his word, he focused on farming and started spending more time working the land near our home. "There's something deeply satisfying about working with the soil," Dad would often say, his face lighting up with joy as he talked about growing vegetables and tending to the earth. Seeing him so happy confirmed for me that we had made the right choice. But Eulalia still seemed unsure. After graduating college, Eulalia had promised to return home and spend more time with the family. But instead, she built a career near her university. Eventually, she married the CEO of a successful IT firm she had met through her job. With her busy life in the city, she rarely visited home. As we talked about Dad's will, Eulalia insisted the farm should be part of the inheritance. Her insistence prompted the lawyer to take a closer look at the documents. After some digging, he discovered that the farm wasn't actually owned by Dad. It was leased land. "That can't be right," I said, surprised. "I had always assumed we owned the land where Dad farmed." Eulalia's expression changed as the realization sank in. It was disappointing, but in a way, it was also a relief. None of us knew much about farming, so maybe it was for the best. The discussion then moved to how the inheritance would be divided. "The house and the land directly surrounding it will go to your mother," the lawyer explained. Eulalia smirked, probably thinking about the rest of the assets that were still up for grabs. "What about the rest?" she asked eagerly. "The remaining assets include savings and a storage shed," the lawyer continued. "These will be divided equally between the three of you." "Savings? That means cash, right?" "I'll take that," Eulalia quickly declared, her eyes lighting up at the thought of the money. "The total savings amount to approximately $200,000, the lawyer informed us. This sum is not subject to inheritance tax." Eulalia leaned forward with excitement. "I want the $200,000 in cash," she said triumphantly, as though she had already won. Her confidence didn't sit well with me. "Hold on," I said, raising my voice a little. "I don't agree. Why should you get all the cash?" "Because I'm the eldest," Eulalia shot back, as if that was a good enough reason. "Fine," she added dismissively. "You can have the storage shed." "What's that even worth anyway?" Her tone annoyed me, but I stayed calm. The lawyer clarified, "The storage shed is located near the farm. Whoever inherits it will own the shed, the small patch of land it's on, and anything inside it." Suddenly, Eulalia seemed more interested. The mention of additional land caught her attention, even though it was just a small plot. It struck me as strange that someone married to a wealthy CEO would be so fixated on getting more. The lawyer continued, "The land attached to the shed is about 75 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom." He then placed some photographs on the table to show us what the shed looked like. The photos revealed a neglected structure. The shed looked worn and weathered on the outside, and the inside wasn't much better. It was filled with simple gardening tools, things like hoses, scissors, and shovels. Nothing in the photos seemed particularly valuable. Eulalia's face twisted in disappointment as she studied the pictures. "I don't want this," she said firmly, pushing the photos away. Her reaction didn't surprise me. The items in the shed had more sentimental value than monetary worth, and Eulalia clearly wasn't interested in sentiment. "Fine," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "You take the cash. I don't want anything to do with that rundown shed," Eulalia said firmly, her tone making it clear she was eager to distance herself from what she saw as a worthless piece of the inheritance. Hold on. That doesn't seem fair, I protested, realizing how unequal the division was. Eulalia had been quick to claim the $200,000 cash, which was clearly the most valuable part, leaving me with what she considered useless. Her confidence made me feel trapped, especially when my mom said, "As long as Eulalia doesn't complain later, I don't see any issue with this arrangement." Complain? Why would I? Eulalia said, sounding almost smug. She was more than happy to take the money and leave me with the neglected shed. I couldn't hide my dissatisfaction, but before I could argue further, Eulalia dismissed me with a sharp remark. "You care more about Dad than about money, right?" she challenged. Her words caught me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. Of course, I valued family over money, but the way she brushed aside my feelings made me feel unsettled and dismissed. In the end, my mom inherited the house and surrounding land. Eulalia walked away with all of Dad's savings, and I was left with the shed. Eulalia even signed a document agreeing not to dispute the inheritance division, laughing confidently as she did so. Her carefree attitude only added to my frustration. Later, I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer and confronted my mom. "Why didn't you support me?" I asked, feeling hurt and let down. "I did help," she insisted. "I made sure you got the shed." "But I'm not happy with just the shed," I argued, unable to see its value. "You might find something wonderful if you give it a chance," Mom said with quiet optimism. Her words planted a small seed of hope in me. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was more to the shed than I realized. After receiving the key from the lawyer, I decided to visit the shed. It was located near the field, about a peaceful 25-minute walk from our house along an overgrown rural path. The field, which Dad had leased until his health began to decline, now lay empty and untouched. The stillness of the area added a solemn, almost forgotten feeling to the walk. When I reached the shed, I stood in front of its worn exterior for a moment, hesitating. Then I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of dust and disuse, and everything was covered in a fine layer of dirt. "Wow, this place hasn't been touched in ages," I muttered to myself. Despite the initial disappointment, I clung to the hope that I might find something of Dad's, a keepsake or a hidden treasure that would remind me of him. As I looked around, I saw that the shed was just as it appeared, a simple storage space filled with old farming tools. Shovels, hoses, and scissors lined the shelves, and there was nothing that immediately seemed special. Maybe I should just take what's here for now, I thought, my eyes scanning the dim, cluttered room. But as I continued to look around, something about the shed felt odd. The interior seemed smaller than the exterior, like there was less space inside than there should have been. Am I imagining things? I wondered. To make sure, I stepped outside and walked around the shed, trying to get a clearer perspective. That's when I noticed something that stopped me in my tracks, a second door, hidden behind a thick cluster of trees at the back of the shed. "Wait, another entrance?" I gasped, my heart racing. From inside, there had been no sign of this door. It was as if the space behind it didn't exist at all. The realization filled me with excitement and curiosity. Could this be one of Dad's secrets? He had always loved surprises, whether it was hiding gifts on my birthday or planning unexpected adventures. Memories of those moments with Dad brought tears to my eyes. This discovery felt like one of his little surprises waiting for me to uncover. Wiping my tears, I re-entered the shed, determined to find a way to open the hidden door. After searching through the tools and shelves, I found something unusual, a set of 3 small keys cleverly hidden in the handle of a shovel. My heart raced as I rushed back to the rear door, hope building with every step. I stood in front of the mysterious door, keys in hand, ready to find out what Dad might have left for me. With a deep breath, I inserted the first key into the lock, eager to see what secrets the shed held. I inserted one of the keys into the mysterious back door, and with a satisfying click, it unlocked. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing a cramped, hidden space. Inside stood a single large safe, solitary and imposing. My heart raced as I stared at it, a whirlwind of thoughts flooding my mind. Is this from Dad's company? I wondered aloud, the sight sparking a mix of curiosity and nostalgia. The safe seemed to hold secrets, perhaps even a final message or gift for my father. It felt like he had left me a piece of himself to uncover, a personal treasure hunt for me to embark upon. As I stepped closer, recognition washed over me. This was the very same safe that used to sit in the corner of my dad's office, a sight I remembered vividly from my childhood. I could almost hear his voice and see him working at his desk. The connection was immediate and emotional, filling me with a deep sense of nostalgia. This discovery felt meaningful, as though Dad had planned it. But knowing him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of his surprises. There's got to be more, I whispered to myself as I inserted the second key into the safe's lock. The lock clicked and the safe door creaked open, revealing its contents. My breath caught in my throat as I stared inside. The safe contained a collection of valuable watches, each carefully stored and well-preserved. Watches had always been one of Dad's passions, but I never realized how extensive his collection was. The sight left me amazed, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Realizing the significance of this discovery, I quickly secured the safe and went to inform my mom. Later, with my husband's help, we transported the safe to our house. As we carried it, I couldn't help but think about the implications of what I had found. The watches were undoubtedly valuable and part of my inheritance, but I worried they might also bring legal or financial complications. Determined to handle everything properly, I contacted the lawyer we had consulted earlier. He suggested I seek advice from a certified public accountant, CPA, to navigate the potential tax implications. Taking his advice, I reached out to a CPA recommended by a friend. The accountant was thorough and helped me handle the necessary paperwork, ensuring that everything was in order. About a year passed, and I had almost settled into life with my newfound responsibilities when Eulalia unexpectedly showed up at my home. Her visit was surprising, especially considering how strained our relationship had been since the inheritance dispute. I was just in the area, she claimed casually, but her restless demeanor suggested otherwise. We lived 35 minutes apart, so her explanation didn't quite add up. Despite my suspicions, I invited her in and offered her coffee. As she sat down, she seemed uneasy, glancing around before blurting out, "Did you win the lottery or something?" Her question caught me off guard. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. I didn't play the lottery, and it wasn't the season for my husband's holiday bonus. "What are you getting at?" I pressed, trying to understand. Eulalia's mood shifted suddenly to irritation. "Are you making fun of me?" she snapped. Her accusation left me even more puzzled. Her line of questioning seemed to come out of nowhere, and I couldn't figure out what she was hinting at. Finally, she admitted the reason for her curiosity. She explained that she had recently run into our aunt in the city. During their conversation, our aunt had mentioned receiving a $2,000 gift card from me as a thank you for visiting Dad during his illness. Eulalia jumped to conclusions. "You've come into some money, haven't you? Just admit it," she pressed, her tone accusatory. I let out a sigh, realizing where her assumptions were coming from. "It wasn't anything extravagant," I explained. "I just wanted to show my appreciation." But Eulalia wasn't satisfied with my answer. "Where did you get the money for that kind of gift?" she demanded. Finally, I decided to tell her the truth. "It came from Dad's inheritance," I said, explaining how I had discovered the safe in the dusty old shed she had so easily dismissed. Eulalia's eyes widened as I described the watches stored inside, a true treasure trove left by our father. Though I wasn't sure of their exact value, it was clear they were worth far more than we had initially realized. "Those watches," I said, "were part of Dad's passion. They're not just valuable. They hold sentimental meaning too." Eulalia seemed more intrigued than ever, but I knew this wasn't just about sentiment for her. "What about taxes?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "That's already being handled," I replied calmly. I told her about my mother's advice to handle the situation transparently and how I had worked with the CPA to ensure everything was properly declared. "Secrets have a way of coming out eventually," Mom had told me, and I took her words to heart. Eulalia didn't say much after that. She seemed to realize there wasn't much more to argue about. For me, the journey was about more than just the watches or their value. It was about discovering another side of my father, his love for surprises, his passions, and the thoughtful ways he had tried to connect with us even after he was gone. As Eulalia left that day, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. My father's legacy wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about the memories he left behind and the lessons he taught us about family, honesty, and appreciating life's little joys. When I first spoke with a certified public accountant (CPA) about the inherited watches, I learned they could help manage the valuation and tax responsibilities. After a detailed review, we discovered that the collection was worth an astonishing $500,000. The value left me stunned, but it also meant one thing was certain: inheritance tax would be due. The CPA's advice was straightforward: keep the watches that had sentimental value and sell the others to someone who would appreciate and afford them. This plan made financial sense and felt emotionally right, as it allowed me to preserve the memories tied to my father while managing the practical side of things. From the sale of the watches, I was able to cover the inheritance tax and even share my gratitude with relatives who supported us during Dad's illness. I gifted them thank you cards, some with gift cards included, as a small token of appreciation. This gesture, however, had unintended consequences. It was what had sparked Eulalia's curiosity and led to the events that followed. Among the keepsakes, I decided to hold on to Dad's pocket watch. Though it wasn't the most expensive item, it was rich in memories. Dad often carried it with him, and seeing it reminded me of his gentle smile and comforting presence. I shared the story of the pocket watch with Eulalia, hoping she would understand its emotional value. Eulalia's reaction, however, was lukewarm. She seemed far more interested in what I had sold than in what I had kept. She asked several questions about the remaining watches and the safe, her curiosity growing. When I explained that the safe was now at Mom's house and mentioned its connection to Dad's old business, Eulalia fell into a thoughtful silence. Her demeanor left me uneasy, but to my relief, she left without pressing further. Still, an unsettling feeling lingered, and later that night, my fears were confirmed. A panicked call from my mom jolted me and my husband awake. She urged us to hurry to her house, her voice trembling with fear. We rushed over, only to be greeted by flashing red lights and police cars parked outside. A crowd had gathered, their murmurs adding to the tension of the scene. Pushing through the group, I found my mother, who was visibly shaken. She explained what had happened. While preparing for bed, she heard unusual noises coming from inside the house. It sounded like someone was searching through her belongings. Terrified, and with no one else home to help, she escaped through a window to seek safety. While hiding outside, Mom saw the eerie glow of a flashlight moving through the house, confirming her worst fears. A burglar was inside. Panicked, she ran to the neighbor's house, and they called the police. When the authorities arrived, the intruder was revealed to be none other than Eulalia. She had decided to break into the house after hearing about the safe earlier that day. Her reckless actions had caused immense distress for Mom and the neighbor, who had no way of knowing her intentions. Caught off guard by the police, Eulalia panicked and tried to flee. Ironically, in her rush to escape, she collided with the very safe she had been searching for. The heavy object toppled over, trapping her beneath it. She screamed in pain, drawing everyone's attention. Paramedics were called, and Eulalia was rushed to the hospital with a leg injury. The whole situation left us in disbelief. Mom and I apologized to the police for the misunderstanding, but the chaos didn't end there. When I called Eulalia's husband to inform him of what had happened, I learned a shocking truth. Eulalia had been hiding a significant amount of debt due to her lavish spending on luxury items. Her husband explained that they had recently argued after he discovered the extent of her financial mismanagement. Eulalia had already spent her entire inheritance trying to cover her debts. That night, she had stormed out, determined to borrow money from Mom. When Mom refused to help, Eulalia decided to take matters into her own hands, leading to the disastrous break-in. The news of Eulalia's actions was the final straw for her husband. At the hospital, He confronted her and announced his decision to file for divorce. Eulalia, in shock, adamantly refused. "I'm not getting a divorce. Absolutely not," she insisted. But her husband was firm. He presented her with divorce papers, laying out the undeniable evidence of their fractured relationship. With no other option, Eulalia reluctantly signed the papers, her face a mixture of shock and resignation. Now confined to her hospital bed, Eulalia seemed to be taking a hard look at her situation. I noticed her flipping through a part-time job magazine, perhaps realizing it was time to take responsibility for her actions. While the events were heartbreaking, this small step offered a glimmer of hope that Eulalia might finally turn things around. As for me, the chaos of the past year had made me think deeply about my own life and family. I decided it was time to move back to my childhood home. While my primary concern was Mom's safety and well-being, there was also a happier reason for the move. I had discovered I was expecting a baby. After discussing it with my husband, we agreed that moving in with Mom would provide the support we needed as we prepared for our growing family. Though I couldn't share the joyous news with Dad, I found comfort in believing that he would have been thrilled. As I look ahead to this new chapter, I feel a mix of hope and peace. Despite the recent family struggles, the thought of welcoming a healthy child fills me with optimism. Life may have thrown challenges my way, but it's also given me the chance to start anew, surrounded by love and the memories of those who matter most.